The Streets of Rage franchise was one of those classic Sega series that more or less died off with its respective console. The side-scrolling slugger was popular enough to become the recipient of the trilogy treatment, and as with the majority of trilogies, the second outing proved to be the penultimate version. Yes, Streets of Rage 2 was Sega's finest entrant in the side-scrolling series, and is arguably one of the greatest beat-em-ups of all time. For the second outing, the character selection was increased from 3 to 4. Adam Hunter was cut to make way for 2 new playable characters, with fan favourites Axel Stone and Blaze Fielding surviving the cull. Axel, donning a blonde mullet that would make a Wham-era George Michael blush, was the beginner's choice with decent attack power and a high health count. Blaze was the obligatory female character and the roaster's all-rounder. Newcomer Skate, real name Eddie Hunter, where have we seen that surname before? A roller skating kid who was big on speed and jumping power, lacked the attack force of the other characters but was a blast to play as. Rounding up the fearsome foursome was Max Thunder, a professional wrestler who played exactly as you'd expect, big, powerful and agonisingly slow. The gang were tasked with taking down the evil Mr. X. Yes, that was his actual name. Mr. X's army of 90s thugs were unleashed on the streets, so naturally it was up to Axel and co to save the city and Skate's older brother Adam Hunter. The story wasn't exactly the next Shakespearean romp by any means, merely providing an excuse for you to beat a bunch of thugs senseless, but smacking up thugs was where Streets of Rage 2 excelled. The game featured 8 lengthy stages of unbridled 16-bit brawling, each with a unique backdrop and set of quirky enemies. The scope on offer here was truly impressive, and the game's visuals hold up well even for a game that's almost 20 years old. You weren't just traversing rage-filled streets as the title suggested, however. In fact, you'd find yourself visiting boisterous beaches, malicious motorways, furious theme parks, pain-in-the-arse pirate ships, and a baseball field to name just a few. The roster of baddies included denim jacket-wearing thugs, a motorcycle gang taken straight out of Mad Max, ninjas, bartenders, kickboxers, and dominatrixes. There were fat guys that spewed fire, overweight boxers, professional wrestlers, and even robots to name but a few of your obnoxious opponents. The names of these varied cast of nutjobs and weirdos wasn't quite as inventive, however, with many of your fist fodder receiving a recycled variant of another's on-screen tag. You'd see plenty of thugs related to the Signal family, for example. Luckily, your selected character was more than capable of single-handedly taking down Mr. X's seething syndicate. The controls were thankfully simple and intuitive. There was a button to attack, one to jump, and one to use a health-draining special attack. The standard attack could be turned into a combo with subsequent button presses, ending with a powerful strike that sent foes flying. You could also perform a jump kick, which was a necessity against some enemies and flying bosses. In truth, the health-depleting special attacks looked cool, but they were never a necessity considering a full combo dealt about the same amount of damage, if not more, and you got to preserve some of your much-needed health as a bonus. Awesomely, Streets of Rage 2 let you use the environment against your foes. Breaking open objects such as crates or bins would often reveal a weapon. There were a number of weapons to wield, including a baseball bat, a steel pipe, a knife, and a razor-sharp katana. Each dealt significant damage to enemies but restricted you to single attacks instead of combos. Weapons could also be thrown at hapless enemies, but you'd be limited to 3 throws of your weapon of choice. In turn, if you were forced to drop the weapon 3 times, it'd be gone for good. One particularly annoying, or hilariously mischievous feature in Streets of Rage 2 was the game's friendly fire. Players could inflict damage on their co-op partner in the same manner they would an enemy, dealing just as much damage to boot. An accidentally misthrown knife could result in many a real-life brawl, especially if your supposed partner suddenly turns rogue and decides to end your assumed co-op agreement. Streets of Rage 2 was a 16-bit beauty back in the day. Levels ooze with attention to detail, helped by visuals that were among the best of the 16-bit era. The game also featured some voice sampling that was also impressive. Some enemies would laugh if they landed a hit on you, whilst others would yell when they were about to strike. Protagonists also had a few audio samples of their own, with Alex's Grandapa or Grasshopper becoming somewhat of a meme in recent years. Finally, it would be an absolute crime to talk about Streets of Rage 2 without mentioning the incredible soundtrack. The game's thumping techno wizardry is courtesy of Yuzo Koshiro, arguably one of the most innovative composers of the 16-bit era. In fact, the music he composed for Streets of Rage series was considered revolutionary and way ahead of its time, even predating genres that would become popular a few years after their release. Koshiro was even asked to play his Streets of Rage compositions at nightclub gigs. If you've yet to walk the Streets of Rage 2 is readily available, featured on multiple Sega collections and as a standalone offering on PSN, XBLA and Steam. Not only was Streets of Rage 2 one of the best games on the Sega Mega Drive, it's one of the most memorable titles in Sega's vast library of excellence.